Hi everyone, welcome. We're about to check in on a system that's now 182 days old. That's 26 weeks, exactly 6 months in service with these African nightcrawler worms, which have been doing this interesting little test. Now we've repeated this cotton fabric composting test with a towel, and the repeat of the test is in progress now, and it's been going for 22 days. The last check-in was 12 days ago, so the first check-in on that towel after the test had started was only 10 days in progress. Now with 22 days, over 3 weeks in progress, I'll be curious to see what's up with the towel. And you know, part of today's feeding includes coffee plus a filter, and this filter is holding up pretty good. Perhaps we'll just, I don't know, make some better use out of it. Use it as supplemental bedding. I got this piece of torn newspaper here too, so besides that I've got my prepared bedding, so we'll come up with some sort of a nice bedding solution for these little guys. It looks like these springtails are busy doing cleanup on a deceased worm. So I guess that's one of the benefits of having helper creatures in your systems. Some of them do things just like that. They take care of housekeeping when worms pass on, unfortunately. I mean, I understand worms eventually getting to that age and reaching the end of their lives. Just want to make sure there isn't some sort of weird situation causing it prematurely, causing wormies to just kick the bucket. So I'm going to plow down a little bit into the material out here. The last feeding would have been down the middle, which is where we typically feed, and that's what the feeding zone indicator was showing us as well. And the feeding is where the towel would have been put. The first time we conducted this composting test with the cotton towel, we did a couple weird things. In the beginning of the test, the towel just sat out on the surface, not really in a location where it would see a whole lot of action. So we sort of shortchanged the process a little bit by doing it that way. And then after we actually started placing the towel down in the feeding zone, right next to the foods, we got to the point where we decided we're not even going to look at the towel, and we just avoided it at all costs. So one day we decided, hey, maybe it's time to actually go dig it up and see how it's coming along, and there was no sign of it. So for this test, we made the decision during each check-in to definitely see how the towel's coming along and gauge its progress and not avoid it. So let's do exactly that. Let's head to the middle of the bin. I mean, out on the outskirts, I saw very few worms, and the worms that I did see, there are a couple dead ones on the surface. Here's a pretty puny looking worm. I'm wondering what the deal is. Hopefully they're down the middle where the most recent feedings and bedding and moisture and towel, everything's been put there. So hopefully that's where we end up seeing some worms. I don't remember how deep the towel was placed, but it was covered with all kinds of delicious foods. And we definitely predicted that its decomposition was probably going to kick into high gear soon. And I guess something I sensed over here where I moved material here, but material over there seemed to move with it. I'm starting to get that feeling like we may have gotten to the towel or a piece of it. Now I've definitely kind of gone right to the bottom and started tilling up material from below. And now I'm starting to see some worms and a little bit of leftover bedding from the previous check-in. And I guess one thing I'm not really seeing anything of is any sign of towel. I mean, it would be nice just to encounter even a little piece of it. But from what I remember, we were already dealing with an extremely fragile piece of material, which seemed like it was pretty much on the verge of getting gobbled up by the worms. Even though it was still intact and still one solid piece of material, it just had this something about it. like it wasn't going to last. So I am definitely starting to wonder if perhaps now, on day 22 of the cotton towel test, the fact that we're seeing virtually no signs of it, or at least so far I haven't seen any signs of it, I'm wondering if the viewers might have, maybe you guys actually saw something that I missed, and maybe there is still a chunk of it floating around that I just sort of blew right by. I don't know, but so far I'm seeing nothing, which would, at this point, suggest that our second cotton composting test in this system is now complete. And it's kind of hard to believe that yesterday there would still have been pieces that we would have clearly seen and been able to identify. And if there are pieces left at this point, there's nothing that I'm finding identifiable as terry cloth, cotton beach towel. So, man, 22 days. And that always, in my mind at least, sort of begs the question about, well, how long over the past 12 days since we haven't checked in here, how long has it really been since the last of that towel was consumed? I mean, was it possibly really just yesterday and took 3 weeks for the towel to get broken down by being constantly submerged down in the feeding zone and constantly getting coated in delicious foods and stuff to help, drive worm traffic towards it? I mean, I really do wonder. Every time I see a little piece of red anything, I keep wondering if I'm seeing bits of the towel, but I have a feeling it's just pieces of, shredded paper or cardboard that I'm seeing. And I don't know, now that we're in the feeding zone, we're down where the feedings have been getting applied and everything like that. Now we're seeing worms, and they're just, to me, somehow appearing to be a little bit sluggish and slow, and it almost makes me feel like I'd like to grab my water bottle. I believe there's still a little bit of water in it, and I think that the system's going to start getting a nice little treatment of moisture. It just gives me the feeling like, even though there seems to be a pretty good moisture level in here, it just seems like a little bit more moisture would be something that the worms would probably really appreciate. So let's see what we could do about enhancing their space a little bit by dampening it, and let's also start bringing in some of these other pieces of material that I had hoped to do away with during this feeding. There's what do we got in here? Apple, there's cucumber, peppers, cabbage, and coffee. So it's a nice little assortment of different things for them. Oops, well, I just tore our new feeding zone indicator. But I don't think that'll be a problem. Let's not forget, we got the old one that we'd like to include down here in the feeding. And I got something else that I've been trying to do away with here. I pulverized some peanut shells, and I figured over the next few feedings I'm just going to start including this. I was even wondering if this would have been a good material to include in my prepared bedding as sort of something to prevent materials from getting stuck together. So I don't know. So we put shredded paper, cardboard, we put coffee, we put newspaper, we put coffee filter. I believe in can come the food. And another thing we can include with the food is some grit. So I'll sprinkle a little bit of that in here too. I guess in my mind somehow, since these are African night crawlers, it almost seemed to me like the majority of what their meal should be is kind of more like their bedding, So a little bit of veggie matter and then a whole bunch of nice lovely bedding for them is probably what they would most desire, because they'll just gobble up the shredded paper cardboard just like it was any other delicious food. So how's that for a pretty generous feeding zone? Let's set the feeding zone indicator aside briefly, because I still wanted to do what we started earlier, which was to apply moisture. So as we begin backfilling this feeding zone, we're thinking we could just include a little bit of water before we cover it up, get things really nice and damp in here for the worms. And then we can start bringing in some of this old stuff that we encountered along the way. Yeah, you know, that's why there's really nothing about this material that I would say is terribly hostile, but if it were more damp, I think the worms would be inclined to be out in more sections of it. Like more of them would be out here on the edges. So perhaps we dampen the material as we backfill the hole. Yeah, you know, I think the worms are going to like that. Same for this side here. Just seemed to me like very few worms hanging out here on the outskirts. And there is a lot of castings material. Perhaps it's not just an absence of moisture. Maybe it's got something to do with just, you know, not a whole lot of bedding out there for them to hang out in. Maybe that's what this system needs even more of, is just some more lovely bedding. Well, hopefully what we gave them today is going to be a satisfactory amount to keep them content. And I mean, at a 6-month age today, the system's definitely coming along nicely. As you saw on the information board, they've been fed 15 times, so what we just gave them was feeding number 16. And after 12 days, it did seem to me like they were ready. And in a way, it kind of makes me wish I had come back sooner, because then we might have still caught some glimpse of that towel. But for it to be completely gone at this point kind of surprised me, I'll admit. So, I don't know. If you've been following along, perhaps you were equally surprised, because in a way I always imagined it to be a process that would take a little bit longer than that. And at this point, 22 days is the official amount of time that I can eyewitness and say, hey, it's definitely gone at this point, 22 days later. But who knows? Maybe it was already gone days ago. Maybe it was only 3 weeks. Maybe it was even less. So definitely curious to hear what people think. Have you ever done one of these tests? If you have, what were your results? Did you find that the fabric was gone within 3 weeks? Did it take longer? Perhaps it was a more dense, tightly packed fabric that maybe takes, you know, the worms a little bit more effort to eat through it. I don't know the details of it, but it is kind of fun. I wonder if we could still squeeze in a third fabric composting test in the system. At 6 months of age, how close are we to finish here? I don't know. Lots of nice castings piling up. Whatever, we'll decide at a different point in time. For now, that's it for the video, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.